Chief Harold Medina, one of our survivors of domestic violence, Julie Jaramillo, Deputy Chief George Vega, and Commander Kyle Hartsock. I will turn it over to Mayor.
Well, good morning. I want to thank everyone for being here for this important announcement and also this important effort that we hope spreads actually throughout the city and if not, well beyond that. So we're going to hear from different perspectives as we heard. I just want to begin, I think, first with just some acknowledgments. We have some folks from our Domestic Violence Commission here. Cherie, maybe? I saw? Yes. Thank you for being here and for your work. And of course, we have a ton of people who work here and with the Family Advocacy Center each and every day. And so, of course, we have Beverly McMillan. Give her a round of applause. And I think I saw Glenn Sarange. No? Didn't? There you are. Yeah. I'm tough on the last name, but appreciate it. Yeah. Now, and Diane Escobar, I think we saw too. Didn't make it. Okay. Anyway, I want to say thank you to the work you do each and every day right here. And I try and just make sure and acknowledge that every time that I'm here, because this is not an area where often we have the public, often we're not as civilians even here as well, because of the importance and the confidentiality and the respect we have for the work that you do. And so thank you so much for the work that you do each and every day here. And hopefully this is a way that the city employment and employee base can actually help with that work. And so we're introducing today the SAFE program. And this is Safe at Work, and it stands for Supportive Awareness, Freedom, and Empowerment to assist those affected by domestic violence. And we know that 1 in 4 people, unfortunately, in our community are affected by domestic violence in one way or another. That is a very high number. It's higher than anyone likes to acknowledge or that most people are even aware of. And we also know that this is a very difficult situation, of course, because of the dynamic typically in the home or with other family members who could be even a part of the domestic violence or certainly allied, if you will, with some of the perpetrators. So the question is, where is the safest place for people to get help, to report what's happening, to share their story? And we know there are certainly places like the Family Advocacy Center, but where else can they do that without fear of retribution? And this is, again, very difficult, even in friendship circles. Think about dynamics that you have with a partner and how you have shared friends and so forth. So it's not really safe to go to family. It's not safe to go to friends. So literally, what can you do? The studies have shown that one of the best sort of vehicles actually to address domestic violence is typically the workplace. And it's because there is an apparatus, the potential for that of confidentiality, of actually access to help, but also separation from those social networks and that home network and that neighborhood network that is often tied into the perpetrator. So that's what we're doing here at the City of Albuquerque. As one of the largest employers in the state of New Mexico, but also in the city, of course, we're going to step up and try and support this in our workforce each and every day. And it's also a way to challenge the domestic violence stigma, this notion that somehow people feel guilty when it happens to them or they feel guilty for talking about it. One of the things we can do socially at work is reverse that and make sure that it's okay to talk about that and that it is never your fault. So what we're going to do at the city is basically a couple of components. We're going to walk through this in a little bit more detail. But for all city workers and all city facilities, we're going to establish, number one, awareness materials. This is going to include some basics like flyers in city facilities and community centers, break rooms, restrooms, digital billboards, or the Johnny boards, things like this. And we're going to make sure that people know, it's all around them in terms of where they can go to help and what domestic violence is. And it sounds very, in some ways, traditional, but we've had strong success with this, with other initiatives in completely different directions, like even sanitary conditions for employees, or just think of all the posters you see in the break room, safety issues and things like this. So we are trained as a workforce, actually, to actually stare at those announcements when you're like microwaving your lunch. But the idea is this is actually one of the most highly effective ways of communicating health and safety issues is things like I just mentioned. And so we're going to be making those awareness materials available throughout the city. We're also going to make sure that we have resource accessibility information available to employees through all our digital platforms as well. So it's our city employee websites, our benefit websites, and of course city human resources and the different portals that we use to access even things like when you check in to get your pay stub or change your insurance. We're going to make sure it's always front and center domestic violence resources. Now we're also, and I think this is one of the most powerful things, is we are going to do mandatory training on domestic violence awareness, what to do if you know someone who's experiencing that, what to do if it's happening to you. Mandatory for every city employee starting May 19th. And that includes myself, of course. So every employee will be doing that, including existing staff. So this is not just for new employees, it's every one of our 7,000 employees. Lastly, we're also going to make sure that we have, that training is going to be supervised, by the way, and coordinated with a lot of the advocacy groups and some of the trainers that do this work in other situations. So just letting you know, we're going to have the professionals do the training. We're not just kind of making it up and throwing it on a website. Now, the last piece is also we want to make sure that there are, as part of this, managing through the reporting and understanding process. Because one of the challenges is the associated stress that happens with domestic violence that does show up at the workplace. And especially if you're involved in trying to do something about that or report it, the increase in stress that occurs that can often affect folks at the workplace. And the workplace can also be one of the few places where you can try and deal with that stress in a confidential way. Again, because often if you're trying to call whoever, whether it's a doctor or a therapist from the home, that is extremely dangerous in a domestic violence situation. So we're going to offer channels for that at the workplace, and that even includes having to do with our health clinic at City Hall and some other areas where people can have confidential conversations and referrals. So we're also going to be attuned to that stress management piece. Now, the last thing that I want to share is that this is an effort, frankly, we should have been doing for a long time. As soon as I heard about this, my first question is why I've been doing this already. That's not what we want to focus on today, because we are going to do this today. What we do want to focus on is why isn't every other employer in the city doing this? We want this to be both, in some ways, role modeling the behavior that employees should have, but also some peer pressure. Yeah, I want to see everyone do this, whether it's the county or P&M or Presbyterian or UNM. And look, some of them may do this already, so if I mixed in some names, I'm just using generic examples. But this really should be part in general of that workforce safety program that we all have, at least for major employers. And so we are open absolutely to sharing our material with all the other employers who might be interested, and also collaborating on training. And so we hope you can all help us even get the word out, and we can get in many more employers around the city to be a part of this program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. Next up, we'll have Chief Medina.
I just want to thank everybody for being here this morning as we talk about this important topic. And I want to thank Mayor Keller for taking this initiative on and making sure that we do put peer pressure within the community for people to have programs like this. We know that domestic violence has no boundaries. It doesn't care if you're rich. It doesn't care if you're poor. It doesn't care in what part of the city you live in. Our officers respond to calls with every demographic of this community reference domestic violence. I think it's important that we do recognize we are one of the largest employers in the city of Albuquerque. The Albuquerque Police Department has employees that have been victims, and that unfortunately at times we've had employees that have been offenders. But I think it's important that we create a safe space at work for individuals to be able to go and get the resources that they need. I worked graveyard for 14 years on the streets of Albuquerque through the rank of lieutenant. And I can't tell you how many times I responded to domestic violence calls, and I saw individuals there who didn't understand and know the resources that they had available to help them out of the situation that they were in. For us, it's really easy to think, oh, people should know that there's help. For somebody who's stuck in a very violent relationship in these situations, they don't always know. They've been controlled many times. There's fears that some of us can't understand, but we must recognize money is used to control people, housing is used to control people, kids are used to control individuals. And we have to recognize that we have to give them every resource they need in order to feel safe to leave that situation. The Albuquerque Police Department believes in the mayor's philosophy of we have to bring education to the community on how we could be better community partners in these situations and how we could spread the word. So the Albuquerque Police Department will be integrating this domestic violence awareness campaign through our crime prevention specialists. Each and every day we have crime prevention specialists that go out into the community. They work with local businesses, they work with apartment complexes on assisting them on how they could prevent themselves from becoming victims. And they will now be armed with information on how they could spread to anybody that is employed or lives at their location the information they need to get out of these situations and get the resources that they so desperately need to prevent themselves from becoming further victimized in the future. So we are committed to continuing to spread this information throughout the community to ensure that each and every time our crime prevention specialists are out there, not only in the city of Albuquerque, but twice a year, we host a conference where crime prevention specialists from across the state come to Albuquerque, and we'll be spreading the message that there is resource, there is help, and there's people who care. The city of Albuquerque, the Albuquerque Police Department wants all of our employees to understand that if you're a victim, we're here to provide support, here to be help, and we're here to make sure that you get all the resources needed so that you could further protect yourself and your children and your family from violence, and be assured that the workplace is a safe place for you to come and get help from. So thank you, Mayor Keller, and thank you for everybody who worked on this to ensure that we get people the help they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Next, we'll hear from Julie Jaramillo, who is actually a survivor of domestic violence, and she is actually currently employed with the Albuquerque Police Department. Julie.
Good morning. Although I don't typically read what I'm going to say, since I do speak publicly for a living, with this topic, I notice the emotion can sometimes get the better of me, and I want to make sure I stay on track for all of you. Thank you, Chief Medina. Thank you, Mayor Keller, for allowing me to take part in this campaign. More importantly, thank you to the city employee whose testimony put this initiative in motion. I am an advanced instructor with the Albuquerque Police Department. I train a variety of topics, including domestic violence. I'm one of the first civilian instructors, which is why I initially chose to leave my history of abuse out of the product that I was teaching, because I felt like at that time, not knowing me, that all they would hear was civilian and survivor, and they wouldn't hear what I was trying to teach. Ironically, it was my fellow instructors, as well as my supervisors, that encouraged me to recount my story and share it with officers. I'm sad to consider myself lucky to have only experienced physical abuse without the compounded stress of emotional, psychological, or even sexual violence. My primary responsibility is to provide ongoing training for our existing officers. For the last year, I've had the privilege of sharing my experience with incoming cadets. Though there are challenges as a civilian instructor, I had failed to recognize the benefit of my unique role, especially as it pertains to domestic violence. I've been fortunate to assist employees within APD, participants of the Citizen Police Academy, as well as friends and family seeking help for themselves or loved ones. Now, my only regret is not talking about this sooner. As Mayor Keller stated, 1 in 4 are impacted by DV, and 4 out of 4 can help. Every one of us has an opportunity to lighten some of that load for these victims. For many, their guilt and embarrassment are enough to silence them. I consider myself blessed to be a voice and a face to represent this crisis and help make sense of it for those less aware of its prevalence and the statistics yet to improve. I'm honored to be working with City HR and Dr. Duranzo to create a new training component for all city employees. I couldn't imagine my work environment would one day serve as the catalyst for me to tell my story in effort to contribute to such an important endeavor. Thank you to my APD family for making me feel safe at work, which now translates into me reassuring others they're not alone in this. I'd like to add a special thank you to Deputy Commander Jaramillo, Lieutenant Lowry, Terry Huertas, and Francesca Perdue for seeing the value in my experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Next up, we will have Deputy Chief George Vega.
Good morning, everyone. My name is George Vega. I'm the Deputy Chief over the Investigations Bureau for the Albuquerque Police Department. The first thing I want to say is thank you, Julie, for sharing that impactful story and telling us your story. It takes a lot of courage for folks to stand up and tell that story, so thank you. And I think it's important for us as a police department also to empower those to be able to educate us and tell us their story so they can come forward and help us understand further. The first thing I want to talk about is a trend that we saw last year related to homicides, where we saw domestic violence turn deadly. There was a nexus of domestic violence in some of these homicides. And what I'd like to remind everybody is that domestic violence have different dynamics. They can have different looks to them. They're not always the traditional romantic relationship that we've seen in the past. Last year we saw a trend where domestic violence cases were related to interfamily conflicts and cultural views that were different. They have a different look to them, and I think it's important to consider many shapes that domestic violence can take on, and that we adjust our resources and adjust our look on how we're approaching these instances, and that's why we're coming forward with this campaign. Brings me into highlighting a unique part of this campaign, which is outreach and making sure resources are available to those who are struggling with stress and conflict management. Reaching potential offenders is also a very important aspect of this outreach. Reaching those offenders, because we know that intervention plays an important role to be able to identify these individuals and intervene in time before we see those trends and it becomes deadly. I want to close just by thanking some of our partners and employees and departments who helped with this. Also, I'll thank Julie again for sharing her story, Dr. Duranzo Eberhardt for sharing her expertise in this subject. I especially want to thank our law enforcement team here at the Family Advocacy Center. Deputy Commander Jaramillo, thank you for everything that you did putting this together. Lieutenant Lowry, and of course Terry Huertas for everything you do for our victim advocates. I want to thank some other departments within the City of Albuquerque, CABQ Human Resources, DTI, all our partners here at the FAC and the Domestic Violence Resource Center for coming and supporting and helping out with this. And also I want to thank our crime prevention specialists, of course, for putting all of the packets together and all the information that we're going to be sending out. And with that, I'll turn it over to Commander Hartzell.
I almost got demoted. My name is Commander Kyle Hartsock. I'm the commander here at the Family Advocacy Center in the Criminal Investigation Division. And one of the most unique parts that I really love about this program is just like when we remodeled this lobby about a year ago, I think we were all here to talk about it, the inspiration to remodel it came from the victims. It came from listening to them and letting them instruct us, how is it going to make it easier on their lives. This idea was actually born out by an employee who works here, who doesn't want to share her name or her story, but did want to share her experience and said, what a great idea if these resources and these things were offered from the city. And she brought that to her supervisors. And from her idea, we found the subject matter experts, we found our own survivor who is brave enough to share her story, which we love. And we've developed this whole model based off a real victim's experience who is an employee at the City of Albuquerque. So the victims are always our teachers, and that is what's really great about when seeing these initiatives come all the way through. The FAC is still such a unique place, and I want to give a shout out to Shannon from SANE as one of our most important partners here. But this whole idea that started many years ago, that victims can come to one place and find the resources they need, is such a strong idea and continues to serve many, many silent victims every single day. Talking about thousands of victims a month come to this building or use the services that come out of this building, which is just amazing. Our Victims Assistance Unit, which Terry Huertas runs, helps ensure, and a lot of people don't know this, 100% of possible domestic violence victims that interact with Albuquerque police officers get follow-up calls or visits in the days just after that incident occurred. We're calling them, we are connecting them with our partners, we are setting up in-person meetings, we're getting them medical assistance if needed, getting them victim resources. But our advocates here at the FAC are making these phone calls, are setting up these meetings on 100% of victims that end up in police reports. I think that's a really important thing because it's a lot. It's a lot of phone calls. That's a lot of follow-up that's going on, and they do a really, really good job about it. Finally, to the victims out there, if you're watching, you have a right to feel safe, no matter where you are, no matter where you work. Calling police can be very, very hard, and we understand that. But just know there's many providers who are not affiliated with government organizations at all that can keep your identity private and confidential and get you the help you need. And if that day comes that you feel comfortable to come forward and tell a police officer or a prosecutor what happened, we'll be here to listen. With that, I'll turn it back over to Francesca.
Thank you. Before opening it up to questions, I just wanted to point out right here we have an example of what the flyer will look like that will go up inside all of city facilities. Down at the bottom you have a QR code, and if you follow that, the website is now live, and that is the new updated website that will have all of the resources that are talked about today in one landing page. With that though, I will open it up to questions. Do we have any questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you to everybody who attended today. Thank you.